Welcome to another edition of Brews and BizDev. Today's illustrious guest is Mr. Alex Villafranca from Arbeit Software. And now I assume in this country, in this area, you might get a lot of different pronunciations of that name. I didn't want to go with the Villafranca kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Obnoxious. How do you tend to put it out to people?
It's just Villafranca, yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty basic. I've gotten so many though. It's so I don't know. I don't even care honestly anymore.
If you get your first name right, we should.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember from I didn't since like elementary school, honestly, like I used to not care. I used to charge my lunch a lot now. It's a weird story, but I used to charge my lunch in elementary school all the time because I didn't get money for it. And I would get more lunches than I was allowed because they would always spell my name differently. So I remember they would write it down and I would see sometimes they'd be like start it with a D or something and they would spell it all differently. It was really funny, but I'm used to it from a young age.
Yeah, and you really took advantage from a young age too. So yeah,
yeah,
not going to get upset about that part of it. All right, cool. And for our brew today, you chose Intelligentsia. And so first off, I'd like to lead these off with, why this brew? What had you pick it?
I used to go to Tim Hortons every morning, and then the pandemic hit. So the first couple days I was still going to Tim Hortons, to be honest. And then after that, I was like, this is probably not a good idea. So I stopped and I tried a few different ones, and this one just was good. It was all, I saw it at Wegmans, and I get it, grind it myself, and it was good. I like it better than Tim Hortons now, which is, I don't know, that's rare. So.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, I wish part of the fun of these things, and I guess I'm being sarcastic when I say fun here. So, is I wander around getting this stuff in advance. Actually, someone just set one up for tomorrow morning, and so now I have on short notice. I got to find some special tea, and I looked up on the internet. I didn't have enough time. I procrastinated on this one. And then I ended up going to the Whole Foods in the area-ish. I mean, I'm in the city, so it's really not in my area particularly. Mm-hmm. But, the online, and it didn't show at Wegmans, like at Wegmans said they weren't going to have it. And so I came out to the Whole Foods to get it. I have had, on the last couple of days, like hotel coffee, like the shit they have in your rooms when you wake up. And let's just say I'm not at the Ritz at the moment. So this tastes delicious. I give it a shout out. I assume it tastes really good anyway, and not just in comparison to some of the worst coffee I've ever had. But I like this. This is
good.
And normally I go dark roast often, so it's nice to kind of switch it up into like the lighter side of things every now and again.
Yeah.
So, solid pick.
Good.
All right, now to the BizDev part. So you are CEO of Arbeit. So why don't you do just your little kind of elevator pitch, tell us about yourself and what Arbeit does.
After 7 years, I still have a terrible elevator pitch, but so Arbeit is a communications platform for businesses that, allows them to get in touch with their consumers more efficiently and effectively. We're actually starting to transition more so into with new products, communications platform that allows businesses to reach consumers in a more friendly and less annoying way, really. But one of our biggest verticals is collection agencies, and we've been doing this for about 7-8 years. We offer various products into that industry. There's a lot of industries obviously that reach consumers and have to reach out to consumers, but collections is probably one of the biggest. And anyone knows Buffalo is pretty big for that space. There's a lot of them. I'm not sure why, but there is. That's the quick what we do.
All right, cool. And now I noticed you're wearing a certain shirt. So now I'm going to allow you to intro another venture that you're part of as well. So why don't you tell us about the shirt you're wearing?
Yeah, I wear these like every day now. I feel weird almost, but I've been doing Arbeit for like 7 years, and I really enjoy starting things. And like the first 80% of anything is like where I get my most excitement out of, and Arbeit's kind of past that 80% now to an extent. So I really wanted to do something new. I love golf, so I started Verde Golf. It's a bold, bright, fun golf apparel brand. And this is one of our shirts, but it's just literally started like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So,
Yeah.
but it's fun so far. So.
All right. Well, so then the word I was getting was pre-launch, because I actually you've come up twice as reference or shout outs in a couple of these episodes so far, and one of them was John Osberg, and you and the shirt came up. I don't think he was wearing one at the time, but he might have been wearing one the previous time I was talking with him, and so it just kind of came out into it. And then another time, actually, I think it was when I was talking with Steve Colton from Encore Golf, and ironically, it wasn't about the golf shirts, right? We just happened to have a conversation, and actually, that's probably a good place to get into it, because what I was saying to him, because we were kind of talking about building the right team and having the right kind of different set of voices, and things don't have to be where you have to be a certain kind of a role player. Where we have got these ideas of what a sales guy is like and what a BizDev guy is like, and then there's all the advice out there that we get that's based on these kind of typical people playing these typical roles. And we had been talking about, well, if you build a team, right, an actually good team where you've got diverse skill sets and people doing different things, then you can be, from what I've seen, like a fairly like introverted, right? You're like you come from the IT side, not from like the sales side of things, right? So,
Right.
but you can also end up having growth because you have marketing people. You have people who are going to come out and do the sales, and that's more of a fit for them, personality-wise, and like that. And I thought it was a great model because you've seen success, you've been growing, and it's not, like you said, I mean, even your elevator pitch, right? It's not like you're at home elevator pitching yourself in the mirror and then coming out to shake people's hands in the suit. I mean, we're not doing that shit here. So, if you could talk just a little bit about, how from the beginnings, how you ended up growing the business, even though you're not some classic out there handshaking sales guy.
It's funny you say that, because that's probably we look back and wonder why is the company so successful? Why did we do so well? And honestly, like, that's probably, I think that might be the reason why. Like anyone at Arbeit's like that. I mean, we don't have, do I got a deal for you? Like, we don't have anyone like that, and everyone is like a nerd in their own sense. But me and Alonzo, we used to have a collection agency, and again, we're not like many collection agency owners. They're more, outgoing and louder personalities, bigger personalities, like the motivational speaker type person, right? And that's not us whatsoever. So I think it was a little bit of like a breath of fresh air. And a lot of people don't trust people like that. Not anything against them, but at least me, salespeople have got a bad rep. Over salesy people, I don't know if anybody likes dealing with an over salesy person. So when we take the approach, just like, this is us, take it or leave it. Do you like what we do? Great. If not, great. Like, do you want to use our products? Awesome. If not, great. Like, it's just, we have like this logical approach to everything. And, like, there's plenty of people who use our products. There's plenty of people who won't use our products, and they have a good reason not to. And there's plenty of, some of our competitors do things better than us, and we do some things better than some of our competitors. And we kind of, I think that shows when we talk to people, and they really appreciate that. And they trust you. And that's been, I guess, our biggest thing, because how we've grown so much is just straight on referrals since day one. I'm not cold calling, and I never did when we were starting. It's not like I was going door to door, knocking, trying to sales people, giving them my elevator pitch, right? I never did that. And just people would introduce us to people. Hey, these guys got something really good over there. And like, we'd talk to them, and if it was a fit, we'd do it. And if it wasn't a fit, we wouldn't. And, and sometimes when it wasn't a fit, like, people appreciate that. And then it turns out to, in a couple of years, they'll send you somebody, or they'll use you. Like, it all works out in the end, I guess, if that makes sense. But, so I really think that's kind of been our, I guess we are just who we are, and that's it at the end of the day. We're not going to try to be salespeople when we're not, or I'm not going to sit up there and try to be this rah-rah motivational CEO. when I'm not. And, I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, because the pretense will wear down, if for no other reason, right? At some points, the pretense wears down. It gets tired. It gets tiring trying to be someone you're not,
Yeah.
and other people pick up that vibe, and that you're struggling to be a fraud, kind of a thing. It's a
Yeah.
difficult dynamic to manage, and including your own people, right? So from a management, like leadership perspective, and I remember. Obviously, we both know Lindsay Zajac. I know that she came out and did one of your podcasts at one point, and there was a similar thing where it was kind of like, all right, well, what do you do? Great leadership tips are great, and like sales tips, right? They're often for that person. Whoever that person is. Like, here's the model. In fact, a lot of the advice is built around that, and it's built around. And if you're not this, here's how to become this. And so I know you had talked at the time about like, well, what are the tips that are actually applicable for people who aren't that person and don't want to even become that person? And there were some good ideas there. What would you say? I mean, have there been adaptations you had to make in the sales approach? Obviously, now different people are kind of running sales, right? You've got like marketing, then the branding and that kind of side, and then you've got people on the sales side. I mean, they're still doing follow-up, I assume, right? It's not like they're just like, hey, whoever, come check us out if you want. Otherwise, we'll just be here waiting, because I've never seen that work as an approach where you just don't go out to one. So I assume, you're not hounding people, right? But there is we're going to reach out, and then there's some kind of like, and then we'll just, keep in touch and follow up. I mean, like what from being very non-sales oriented, like what adaptations have you had to make along the way, system-wise, to adapt to the fact that you don't want to change as people?
Right. So that's a good question. And we, for the first couple, honestly, for the first 5 years, we did just sit there and say and wait, and it just happened. People just called. People sent us. So people sent us so many referrals for our. I mean, and they still do. Like, honestly, referrals is still one of the, if not the biggest part of our lead gen. So, that is something that works, and it's just something that over time, because of how we are, it is kind of consistent. You would, so that's good. But with that being said, like to if you want to like grow and you want to have like some sort of like, hey, we want to hit this benchmark, or we want to consciously like grow, because we've never consciously grown at any point in our, we've just did our job and it happened. Like we didn't, we never started saying, well, we want to do 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. It was nothing. We just did it. And, now we're at a point where when growth starts to, I guess, not go down, but it starts to plateau a little bit, not spike as much as it did in the first 3 or 4 years. Now you look and say, oh, well, what can we do to make that better, without losing who we are? And, and with the sales team, like we'll reach out to people, and they reach out, they cold call, they knock on doors. And, but when they do it, they just try to understand what this business is dealing with, try to get the person to bring to light any problems that they're having. They'll have a conversation like, hey, how's everything going? You guys working from home? We all, what's that like? What was that transition like? And sometimes small things that that we know companies struggle with will come up in that conversation. And then the sales team will then they go in on that problem. Like, hey, I don't know if you realize, but that's actually something that a lot of people that we, deal with, and a lot of our clients struggled with. And this is what it was causing them. And then kind of lay out, like, because somebody might not realize that they have a problem. So laying out the kind of consequences or the impact that problem has on their business, and then going from there. And, sometimes, especially now during this pandemic, there's a lot of problems that are problems, but it's all relative to what's going on. And it's just not a problem that's important that they care about fixing right now. And that's fine. We get it. There's plenty of people, I got plenty of problems that I'm not trying to fix right now, because it's just not worth it. We got too many other bigger problems.
Yeah.
And the sales team takes that approach. If somebody they're like, hey, this is what's going on. It's okay. Awesome. Like, and then they'll continue to follow up. is this a priority now? Is, things gotten better with you? What was the big, to try to understand what that bigger problem was maybe at the time. So then was that problem solved? Do you have time to look at this now? But really, we just try to identify like a problem that somebody's having that we can solve. Some people aren't having problems that we can solve, and that's fine. We move on. Like, we're not going to try to sell somebody something. And we're working on this as a sales team. Like, this is like, it's a good conversation to have right now because we're actively, consciously trying to get better at what I'm talking about right now. Like, it's very relevant.
Mhm.
So that, like, I'm listening to the sales team's calls, like, constantly. We brought in a sales consultant before the whole pandemic, and Mike and Jason over at Naker Consulting came in, and they've been helping us with stuff. We're not working with them right now because of the pandemic, but we're still talking and, getting stuff with them. So yeah, it's an active, ongoing effort to make sure that we kind of do this. And I don't think it ever ends. It's just something that you constantly you're always greasing the wheel. Like, you don't just set it and forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully not. I mean, I know people wish it worked that way, which is often a bad sign, right? Because at some point they're going to take their eye off of what matters and stop taking care of people.
Right.
It's kind of like the whoever. I'm sorry, when I was working, I just binge watched that whole Watchmen, the HBO Watchmen series, like over the last day and a half, basically, all night and morning, I guess, and there's a part in there where they say, oh yeah, we don't believe that this person actually wants to help people, because anyone in history who's wanted the power of a god so desperately is not likely to actually use that very well when they get it. So it's kind of like salespeople who, like, when marketers and salespeople are like looking for the simplest possible answer to get the most, clients and get the most stuff in a way that they don't have to touch or really worry about dealing with people at all. They don't want a system that just does it for them and just handles it and they just get the money. I find that they're often, even while they're stuck working with people, like, that's the level of performance they're going to have, right? It's like they're going to perform like someone who's stuck in a position that they hate being in. And I know, because I've been that dude, for years wanted the silver bullet, the easy answer, the system that handles it, the digital funnel, the whatever answer that it was, where it's like, so I don't have to be the person dealing in relationships, again, kind of pretending to be that salesperson, right? Going through those motions and having to show up and pretend like I like people, all that extra stuff.
Right.
Because after a while you can see that I don't, and then the work suffers and the relationship suffers, and it doesn't make sense for people. So I think that, like you're saying, like laying out something, like knowing who you are, and then building a system around that, because most folks, and if we look at businesses coming through and out of a pandemic, some of which have very new business models and don't, there's not some buffer in the background. Like, they don't have 5 years to play well, I hope this goes well if we just sit here, and just like let our product speak for itself. Most people don't have that kind of a runway in case that's not what happens. And so they need, there has to be some kind of a system coming out. And I think what you're talking about makes sense. You build in the normal practices and systems and processes of a sales team, but then it matters how you're having the conversations, right? It matters what's being said in those conversations, and the tone and the implication of what's being said, not only by the customer, but by you. And I've seen people post on LinkedIn and those kind of places, I'm sure you have as well, where the tone, we had a lot of vapid kind of like, oh, in these unprecedented times, leading right into some crappy discount, like forced thing. Yeah. And I've seen people say now there's a flip where people are doing more of the urgent thing. The message is now not pretending to care. The message is like, hey, well, if you want this, you better get it now because we're jamming, like this very salesy, pushy.
Yeah.
And as you said before, I don't think that was ever good. Like, that's never, nobody's ever like that. Even those kinds of salespeople don't like getting sold that way. And certainly at a time when you probably do have 5 or 6 more important problems, at least, going on from the societal level, the pandemic, the recent unrest we've had, like all the levels, all the way down to whatever the personal impacts and business impacts. The idea that people are going to respond to you just coming at them and being like, well, hey, do you want this? Because you're going to lose your chance is insane. But some people do that. And so,
Right.
having a model where it's like, you don't have to act that way, which doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything. Like you do the normal stuff, the kinds of things that, Jason and Mike are going to recommend that the sales consultants of the world, so many are gonna would recommend.
Yeah.
Like smart stuff, right? Not well, just be more confident, and jack yourself up in the mirror and do jumping jacks before you walk into the room, Tony Robbins style,
Right.
cold bath or whatever the hell that stuff is. The stuff like, okay, yeah, just follow up, set expectations, upfront contracts, those kinds of things where you can be a
Mhm.
decent person and then still engage in an intentional line of questioning designed to see if there's something for you to do together. And if
Right.
you've got the right people in that spot, then they're going to handle that the right way, and they're not going to turn that into a pushy kind of an asshole exchange.
Yeah.
Have you bumped into anything where you brought people on and they, like they didn't fit kind of like the culture, what you were putting out? Maybe they went too salesy and that was not a fit, or they just took advantage of the step back culture and just sat there.
Yeah. I think it's different, and for sure that's happened. People have started and sales reps, and then they go, they'll go into this huge sales pitch when they see people. Every chance they get, they start sales pitching, and like, I get that. It's fine. Like, and I get it, but we don't do it like that. And like, and it's a kind of shock. Like you're telling, I remember telling somebody this, and they're like, "Whoa, like you don't want me to sell?" Well, what do you mean? That's weird. I've never done this. And it's like, yeah, that's just, but that's who we are. So yeah, that's happened before. Um, but not too much. And it's not like it was this bad thing, it's just like it happened and we talked about it and they were like, okay, I understand. And we did it. Um, but I think to go back a little bit. I think also one of the biggest, like it's easy to say, it's easy for somebody to say, oh yeah, we want to solve your problems and take this sales approach. But when it's hard to actually do that, and it's hard to like it's hard to realize that this person's not a fit and to move on. I think a lot of sales reps they don't want to accept that. They don't. A lot of times when you're doing sales, a lot of salespeople, they just say, my product can solve your problems no matter what. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's always going to be good for you to use our product. And they just get this tunnel vision. That's
Yeah.
all they care about. And I think one of the most important things with like doing this is, to realize that, because if you don't, then you instantly like have no trust with this person whatsoever.
Right.
Um, like me personally, when I'm talking to somebody, like when somebody brings up negatives about what they're doing or like things that maybe are bad, or things for me to consider, like that really makes me start to trust them a lot. So I don't know, I think that's hard to do. A lot of people say they can do it, but that's one of the hardest things for doing this method. Like it's easy to ask questions and say, oh yeah, we'll fix your, we're problem centric selling or something.
Mhm.
um, but when it comes to actually, when the moment comes where this person has no problems that you can solve, just accepting that and moving on, like, that's the hard part.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and do you think, and I'm going to make an assumption here, but I would think that for that kind of issue, I mean, again, one problem is the training and what people are expected everywhere else, right? As a salesperson, it's on conversion. What makes you a good salesperson, certainly in the old school world,
Mm-hmm.
is that you take whatever the situation is and you turn that into a sale, right? It might take you 3 hours of beating someone down in their house in the evening when you're selling roofs or something like that. But I mean, the timeshare, of course, is the ultimate crappy sales example, just like kidnapping people into their little thing and then not letting them out until they sign up. So there's like, you're judged as your value, your worth, right, on your ability to turn things into sales.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then in other situations, structurally, that's what you're paid for.
Mhm.
So in a situation where you're getting, let's say, no base or low base, right? Something that's not going to pay your bills, and then you're getting paid on commissions for, you're not getting paid on commissions for well conducted no conversations. You're getting
Right.
paid for, people turning into sales. And I've seen companies who lean way more in the commission direction, and instead of even bonusing on different kinds of KPIs, it's commission based, and then have the rhetoric of but if it's not a fit, our people aren't gonna, and like, what would you expect this person to do? Like,
Right.
if they need to pay their bills at home, they need to sell some shit, not
Yep.
like take care of non-buying customers. So
Exactly.
I say that and assuming that you're not paying salespeople on a commission-only model, because
No.
you're trying to, you don't want to build a system where they have to turn that way. You want to
Right.
build a system where they've got the freedom and the comfort level, to be able to let people come to the choice and be able to, like, find fits and say
Mhm.
when it's not a fit, right? So, what, in your experience dealing with people coming from other places and with other backgrounds, does either one of those seem like a bigger reason for them being the conversion heavy salespeople? Like, do you think it's more social training and how they need to show up, or do you think it's the fact they've been paid that
Um, that's a good question, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would say it's probably both. A cop out answer I'll take.
way?
I mean, it's probably a little bit of both.
Mhm.
I mean, there's people that, yeah, sure, they're paid that way, but there some people have morals, right? And they're not going to just like lie and cheat people, most people at least, to get that most commission that they can. But of course, if they're paid that way, they're going to think, I have to get all these, I got to close as many deals as I can and whatnot. Um, and then I think a lot of it is just like, this is what a salesperson is. You just have this view like, well, that's what it's, I don't even know where it came from, but there's, if you ask anybody what's a salesperson in their head, they probably, most people have this image that it's probably pretty similar. you know um you go into like the used car lot, and person that comes out and say, hey, I got a deal for you, right? Like, everyone's got this image. And yeah, but definitely the pay structure. I mean, the system, if the system you know creates an environment that is going to force somebody to do that, yeah, for sure. We've gone through a ton of commission structures at Arbeit, and we've changed it multiple times. um, and like, one of the things that we've done to combat that um, is commission based on like your customers spend, like, for their entirety of the time that they're with us. So it kind of like, uh, you don't really get heavy upfront commission on a deal. You're getting paid out like forever if you sign up a customer, as long as you're people signing up a lot of customers in 1 month, and then those customers were leaving. And it's like, well, what is that? That doesn't do us any good. Probably lost us, even if they spent a good amount of money, it's not worth it. It lost us money because we're spending all this time and effort setting them up. Um, so I'd rather have the sales rep sign up 5 customers and keep 5 customers forever than sign up 10 customers and keep, 6 or something, because then those 4 people, why'd they leave? They probably don't like you now. They're going to go tell everybody this, and now you're going to lose customers at it's like,
Yeah.
we're always trying to think down the road, and like, we do a lot of things consciously to make sure that even when somebody leaves us, we manage expectations as best as we can. But we want to make sure that somebody always has something good to say about us. We don't ever want somebody to leave and crap talk us, or somebody to have a bad experience and get overselling. I hate when people oversell. I hate
Yeah.
that so much. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, well, it leaves the rest of the company to clean up the mess, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
you have the overselling person who often, at least in the other kinds of sales roles, my experience is the overselling person is also that classic, and I'm not going to do the paperwork kind of person either.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the hot rod or the lone wolf out there, overselling,
Yeah.
lying, and then not doing any of the rest of their job. And so everyone has to clean up their mess on a regular basis. And I found, before I was doing this, I used to do like organizational development consulting and those kinds of things, and I would see that stuff inside companies, and that's damaging. like no matter what your model is, or if you're okay with people, like the salespeople are positioned to, you do want them to convert, right? You do want them to like lean in and okay, that's fine. But the line, no matter if it's your top producer, my experience has always been you can remove that line non-job doing person that the whole admin department has to make up for, and then the whole company has to make up for when all the expectations are ruined. You don't get those sales, but my experience is you remove that and the people around breathe a
100%.
breath of fresh air, and then all the performance comes up a little bit, and you redistribute those leads to people who are not going to make you look like an asshole in the end.
Yep.
And it all works out. And I mean, I've seen that. That's been like hey, here's our one, 7-figure salesperson, and it doesn't work. I mean, they're just that type. And again, and cool, a lot of places will hire that type, right? So it's going to be better for them and for you and for your customers and everyone if you just cut them loose and then let them go somewhere where that's okay, in your company. And so at least I would assume you don't run into a lot of that anymore, because often those people exist because they've been encouraged to be that way.
Right. Yeah. And I agree 100%. If your top sales rep's an asshole, then you should fire them. I mean, anybody, just because somebody's good at their job doesn't give them the right to be like an asshole to other people in the company.
Yeah.
And we've never, I'm very glad, like our culture has never, ever had some, obviously stuff has happened like where people have done things, but we've never had a problem like that. And honestly, I've never worked, except for Arbeit, I've never really worked in a corporate environment or a company. And my uncle recently went to a new job and he was telling me all these things that people were doing. And like, I'm like, oh my God, how could you work with people like this? Like people talk to their coworkers this way. I'm like, what? How are these people still employed? Like, it was crazy, but I agree. 110% on that point.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that part of it is if we redefine what the job is, right? So people who happen to be able to force conversions into conversation, right? Who can influence that one piece, like that's not all of sales. And
Right.
so their sales job includes like actually technically explicitly includes like, no, but then you have to complete, your paperwork, your digital
Right.
point paperwork, like you have to do the thing, and setting up customers with terrible expectations who are then unhappy, and then don't leave us good reviews is not part of your job. We want to kind of, so once companies, and I mean, you've been like that from the start, and then figuring out the structure as you go. And I think, sometimes culturally it's a harder thing to adapt, especially if you've got some older folks. If you've got the classic old white man triumvirate at the top of your company, right, who's like, they got success one way 40 years ago, and that's what they look for. And they don't want to redefine sales to leave themselves out of the loop. And unfortunately, that's, if your idea of sales is just that, like you're going to walk in and you're going to like strong arm someone into a bad deal for everybody, I think that's got to go. I think it's got to go. And that's why I appreciate the model you're using.
Yeah, and a lot of people think sales is like the most important department in the company, but just like you were saying, like everything affects everything else, and it's like every department's a cog, and they're all the same exact size. And if sales is important, but if you don't have a product to sell, okay,
Yeah.
if a client calls in and they have an issue and no one can solve that, and no one solves that issue, they're gone, right? If no one's running those payments for these billing and keeping this all track of this, you're not getting one. So everything is like, yeah, there's no department that's above any other department. Everything is just, yeah, they're all equally as important, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sales is just the obvious one, right? Because it's like, yes, we equate sales with the revenue, but then in some models, the sales digitally handle themselves. You don't require salespeople. You still call it sales because it's just what you call revenue in. But to your point, that revenue doesn't maintain very well. If the product is terrible, or the service department isn't there, or people end up leaving because they got sold a bad bill of goods, then it doesn't really matter. Like that will blow back. And especially in a community like the one we're in, right? Obviously, we're doing work that isn't stuck in the community. We can do work with companies from all over the place, but we are trafficking around this community, and these communities, like as they say in Letterkenny, bad gas travels fast in a small town, so you don't really want to leave a trail out there of being that asshole,
Right.
burning companies. And I can think of a few people who have that going on like right now, and you can find their trail and you can have the messages along the side of like, can you believe this dude? Like, oh yeah, let me tell you a story. Like that's how it goes here.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be that asshole and then keep finding work and finding people to engage with you. And I think that's fine. I'm okay with
Yeah.
it.
Especially like this during the pandemic, you really saw it forced a lot of businesses' hand and like to show who they really are. you know, I made, there was businesses that would not work with us or would not assist us, and like this affected everybody. Everyone lost revenue. So somebody who wasn't willing to like understand that and work with us during this time, it was like, well, I'm not using them ever again. And I'll never, and it's like, so it kind of forced you to like, it forced a lot of businesses' hand on that. And a lot of people were super, 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 I was surprised even. A lot of people were very, very, very helpful, super willing to work with businesses. And it was refreshing to see that for sure.
Yeah.
But there was a select few who weren't. And I think a lot of people will remember that. And that's going to travel around during, word spreads, and no one's going to, something like this is going to be on people's minds now. This is going to change. They're going to think, what if another disaster happens? I don't want a vendor that's going to kick me to the curb and say, screw you, you owe your bill in full.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, the reality is, well, this one isn't even over yet. Let the pandemic itself, let alone the financial repercussions, economic repercussions of it. But there will always be a disaster.
Yep.
Even if it's just economy, what the capitalism does is pop on itself and collapse and then regrow. So like there is going to be some other spot where we're all in a pinch together. And yeah, the question would be, who do you reach out to? And some people have made it clear that it's not going to be them, and not be dealing with them in the meantime either, right? But it has shown some things, so I guess we're lucky for that, right?
Yeah.
Some things. All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna let you get back on with your day here, bud, and I appreciate you coming out and sharing some wisdom. I love the non-conventional business development approaches. That's what I've been trying to like feature on here. Like how to do this without being the typical guy that we both like so much. So I appreciate your take on it and being an example of not a theoretical example, but like, listen, here's how we've grown this, right? And we don't have that guy. We've gotten rid of that guy whenever it seems like he's popped in, and not like you have everything handled, but like when you're coming from that place and that intention, you can build a business that way. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for the coffee recommendation.
No problem.
And we'll catch up soon.
All right. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you having me.
No problem.
All right. Thanks. See ya.
See ya.